It is nice to have you all here today. Thanks for joining us. My name is Alex Homer. I am the Customer Success Strategic Program Lead out of APJ. I have the pleasure, the honor of being your host this morning, this evening, this afternoon, wherever you're based from. It's great to have you here. We've also got Clark Fuller online. Clark is a professional services engagement manager here with us. Great to have you, Clark. I'll hand it over to Clark very soon, who will be going through the session with you today to go through the functionality, have you understand what we're going through. Now, the session today will go for about 30 minutes. There is a Q&A spot within your Zoom webinar. So please put through any questions that you might have. I will be checking and going through them. I'll try to answer them as we go through. If there's an opportunity for me to interrupt Clark, I'll certainly do just that. But otherwise, we'll use that as well in the Q&A section towards the end. Some objectives that we'd want to get out of today is have you understand how to deploy templates with Wrike, get a thorough understanding of automations and how to streamline your workflow out of Wrike, how to leverage automations and custom workflows. So when something happens, when you change the status, what else might happen will come with that. Of course, how do we ultimately improve collaboration out of Wrike, and of course, maximize ROI with this platform. Now, before we kind of get into that, I want you to know that you're not alone. We have, the likes of Siemens, a Fortune 500 company that's also experiencing the same challenges that you might be. They come on board with Wrike trying to execute a vast amount of small projects efficiently while trying to reduce labor costs and with multiple groups around the world. So they went ahead and deployed Wrike with over 14,000 users in 20 different countries, with custom workflows, improved collaboration, automations, tailored templates, I should say, and had reduced their labor time to improve productivity by around 10%. Their global product management manager, Christina Fisher, has said that Wrike offers some helpful out-of-the-box features that are essential for enterprise use. However, custom workflows and conditional request forms support the scale-efficient management in regions. It's that kind of testament. It's that kind of stuff that keeps us going and doing what we're doing. How do we get you doing this same sort of stuff? How do we have you achieving the same sorts of results like Siemens? Well, to that effect, I'm going to hand it over to Clark Fuller. I don't want to waste anyone's more time with slides. So Clark, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so very much for taking us through the session today. I'll stop sharing and hand it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I am an engagement manager here, and that means I work with some of our larger customers to help oversee their deployments. I also work with specific customers on key deployments and really enjoy working with clients and look forward to doing this session with you. Let me go ahead and start sharing screen here. So the first thing we'll look at is creating a space template. So if you're somewhat new to Wrike, you can click the plus button up here on the top right and go to create a space. And you'll notice that there are different templates that can be used here. Think of this as a way to see what's possible in Wrike. So if I come down to the services and consulting area, and then I have different options here. If we look at the services scoping and initiation template, this tells us what is possible here. So I have, in this template, we're going to have projects, folders, and tasks get added, in addition to some request forms, a custom workflow, etc. So using the template is a good way to just see an example. And in the past, it used to be that when you used a space template, it was kind of hard to remove the items. But that has been greatly improved now that everything is brought into a space. So if you need to delete it, you delete the space and you're pretty good to go. So I would encourage you to check that out if you haven't played around much with the space templates. Now, in terms of what we're looking to get done today, let's first start with a blueprint. So I'm going to flip over here to another tab. So we have the blueprint section, and it's under the space selector here. So I'm in the Lightspeed UI here. So this may look a little different if you haven't switched over to that UI. So under the space selector, we have the blueprint section, and there's a bunch of folders under here. The blueprints are going to be shared privately by default. So a good recommendation is to go ahead and create folders for your specific team or department and share that folder out. And then everyone will have access to the blueprints. So under the services folder here, we have this audit and assurance blueprint. So in this demo, I am a professional services firm. We provide audit services. And you'll see here that we have some tasks outlined and some subtasks. That's really the first step you want to take when you're creating a blueprint, is outline the typical steps that need to happen in your project. Now, one word of caution here: if you're creating your first blueprint, it's common for individuals to just create a bunch of steps and kind of go too granular. So you'll want to guard against that and think about, what are the steps that I really care about? Which items would I need to report on or track? And that's what you'd want to build your tasks out. If you have some steps that are informational, you can put those into the description of the task and use bullets or checkbox items to put them in there. A good rule of thumb to shoot for when you're building out a blueprint is cover about 80% of the common steps you would take, for your typical use case. There will often be exceptions that you'll need to make and tasks that, that you would need to add in or adjust. But if your blueprint covers 80% of the items, that's a really good starting point. So we have our tasks built out here. And then the third column over, we have the job roles as assignees. So job roles are a placeholder. They allow you to indicate the type of function that will perform that step rather than assigning it to an individual user. And that's helpful for two reasons. It helps with capacity planning. So now I can say, okay, I need an auditor for this project. Not sure who on the team will be performing that step, but we know that we need an auditor there. So you can assign that, and then you can report off of that. How many hours are assigned to our auditor job role. The other place that it comes in handy is with the financial planning, and we'll look at that on a little bit here in some other columns. The job role is created by the admin, so you have to have admin rights, and then within the job role, you can assign rates, a default bill rate and cost rate. You then can connect that job role to a user, and that's also an admin function. So in Wrike, a user can only have one job role. So you get the job role defined. You'll want to add in a start date and due date. So you'll notice that these are all in the past. That's okay, because when you're creating a blueprint, you're really creating a framework. This typical project here would take about 2.5 months, right? It starts in April and ends in June here. So that gives us a good idea of how that project plays out. Then when we create a project from a blueprint, we can use the reschedule functionality, where we ask the system to reschedule all these tasks based on a date that we give it. And that will allow us to keep that same flow of tasks and just shift everything over to a new time frame. And I'll show you how to do that.
Well, just
We
got a
have
quick
effort
question
here.
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think this might be a good little moment to jump to this one really quickly. We've had a question with regards to job roles, and curious on how and where do I go about seeing job roles, as someone may not have visibility of them.
Yep. So again, job roles are an admin item. So let me just flip over here to a new tab. And you have to have admin permissions, and then you would go into your profile and into the settings. So I would click my profile here, go to the settings, and then it's under the account management section here. And these are the job roles.
Excellent. And this comes with a particular plan, am I right? With our Pinnacle
That's
plan?
a great question. That's actually something I'll have to follow up on.
No problem. We'll get back to that individual with the response to that one. Thanks, Clark.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's come back here to the blueprint. And in your blueprint, you want to assign effort. So effort is hours-based within Wrike, and the effort allows you to, again, for capacity planning, it's a ballpark amount of time that task is going to take. And then it's also used for the financial aspect here. So if we keep scrolling to the right, we see that each task is defined as either billable or non-billable. And then we have the planned fees and planned cost columns. So these planned fees and planned cost are default fields along with the actual fees and actual cost. In order to see these in the blueprint, the user has to have permission granted to them. So there's a certain setting for their financials in their profile. And when they are given that permission, then they would see this in the blueprint. Otherwise, they would not see these fields. The task type has to be billable in order for the system to calculate these. So that's, as you're setting this up, that's a good tip to take away is make sure your tasks are billable. You can set that by default in the project. So if I go to the info panel here of the project, then there's a 3-dot icon on the right-hand side. I can select that and change the default type for the entire project. So if I come down to financial settings here, I can flip this over. If my project is non-billable, I could change this to billable, and force all of the items in the project to be billable. Okay. And notice here, it's calculating the planned fees based off of the effort. So as I mentioned, the job role has rates assigned there. So this is the planned fees are the bill rate times the effort for that job role. Planned cost or the cost rate times the effort. Once the project is live and users are tracking time against that, that's when the actual fees would start to be populated. It would take the time spent times their rates and populate those. So let me pause there for a second. Any additional questions coming through around blueprints?
Nothing at the moment, nothing else around blueprints, Clark, but I'm glad you've given me a moment here. We've got a question come through with how does Wrike show an admin the view of a particular person or summarize their permission rights? And we might leave that one towards the end if it's okay. We'll save that one for a little bit later in the session and put that towards the admin piece. Okay. What are your thoughts on that one, Clark? We'll save that to later.
Yeah. Well, I'll give a quick answer now. So essentially, when you're looking at a user, you can tell what their permissions are in the permissions tab. So if I open up this user here, let's go to VP PMO Michael, I can see the permissions tab here. When you create a user as an admin, there will be certain items checked by default, and then you can go in and adjust those by editing their profile. So yeah, that we can dive into that more at the end if there's more time, but hopefully that gives you a little value there.
Nice, thanks, Clark. And I've got another one that has come around blueprints. In the blueprints, can you set a task dependency so that they get carried through to a project creation as well as start and end dates? That's a great one. I reckon that's probably a great segue into something that you're about to jump into very shortly. So I'll probably leave that one to you soon enough.
Yeah, you bet. So, yeah, you certainly can create dependencies. I like doing those in the Gantt chart. So you can pull up the Gantt chart and there's the ability to create dependencies visually. So I can click the little target icon here and drag over and create a dependency that way. Also, you can use the column here, the predecessors column, and create dependencies there. So 2 different ways to do that. And they do carry over. So when you create an item from a blueprint, it would carry over. And let's go to that step now. So I'm in the blueprint folder tree here. When I right-click that item, I have the option to create from blueprint. And first thing it's going to do is prompt me to enter a name. So I'll put in this is ABC Corp. This is our audit. And then you want to save it to a specific location. So in this case, I'll save it to our new and active leads folder. You have the ability of notifying assignees. So if your blueprint has individuals rather than job roles, with this checked, it would notify those folks. And then the reschedule feature, this is what I mentioned earlier. You can choose to reschedule everything based on a start date or an end date. So this would, in this case, it would take the latest end date of a task in the project and reschedule based on that, or you can choose to have it around a specific task. So I'm going to reschedule. Let's go out a couple months here. We'll choose Halloween. That's scary enough for a live demo. And we'll go ahead and hit create. And then in the back end, the system is going to create a project, and it's going to take those tasks and shift them so that they're all based on the October 31 timeframe now. And if you're doing a lot of kind of standard processes, using the rescheduling feature can save you a lot of time because you just have your dates set up the way you need them, and then you can just have the system build out the plan for you. So if we look here at our new project that's been created, we come down to the end. This reporting step has a 10/31 end date, and it's shifted everything back based on that. All right. So we've built this off of a custom item type, and let's take a look at that. We see that we have a custom icon up here. So the audit and assurance custom item type. And the way you find your custom item types, this was one that's at the space level, so they can be either at the space or the account level. You would go back to the space, and then there's a gear icon here, and you would need to be a space admin to see that gear icon. Click into that, and then we see different tabs here. And the second one over is the custom item types. Custom item types come in two flavors. You can have a project item type or a task item type, and you can define a name for it, and you can define an icon for it. If we go into the audit and assurance item type here, we see that some of the benefits of item types are that you can define the layout. So you can choose which sections are shown here or hidden. You can define the fields that are available and the order of the fields. Whereas with standard projects and tasks, the order is predefined as alphanumeric. So I can adjust the order here. Over on the left-hand side, I can also determine whether this shows up in the quick access menu, set a workflow specific for that item type, and identify when somebody creates this audit and assurance, what sub-items are they allowed to create. So lots of ways you can control and have kind of a central management of your custom item types. One of the big benefits is that you can create automation rules specific for that item type. You can also filter on that item type in reports and use that to just narrow your data set down to that specific item. All right,
Mark,
let's
I've got a
take a look.
question on this, if
Yep,
it's
go ahead.
okay here. Might stop to interrupt you, sorry there. Any downsides to using custom item types? And a little follow-up to that again, I guess, what's the difference between a custom item type and a blueprint?
Yeah, so you do want to be careful with custom item types that you don't get too many created, meaning if your users are creating a separate item type for each little work item, then you're going to create a challenging situation for maintenance. So I would encourage you to be thoughtful about them, create some more generic ones that can be used across teams, across departments, rather than creating each individual ones for every little use case. And then the difference between a custom item type and a blueprint is really more the steps that you're going to take in your project. And the item type is more about surfacing data. So, what fields do users need to see, and how are they going to see the data when they load that item up?
And I think that's a great also response to one of the questions that's just come through around, can item types have sub items attached directly to them? And I guess the response there is that you'd probably want to have your item type as part of a blueprint if you need sub items. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you would set those up, chain them together in your blueprint.
Excellent. I hope that answers that person's question as well. Thanks, Clark. I'll leave you to.
Okay, excellent. So let's look a little bit at our automation rules here. So when I open up the manage automation rules, I'm going to start by creating a new rule to walk through the options here. The first parameter is, what is the scope that the rule applies to? So in this case, it's applying to this item type. We can have it act on items in the entire space, or we can drill down to specific locations. This would be a folder or project location here. The next parameter is the trigger. So what is going to cause that rule to fire? And you'll see that the team's been working hard here, adding lots of great triggers in. Some common ones, when the status changes, you would want to take an action. So if the status changes to reviewed, we're going to move that into an active state, something like that. Another helpful rule is, what happens if the status doesn't change? So I want to track this item. It's moved into an on hold state, and I want to make sure people have eyes on that. So let's create a rule that if the status doesn't change in 10 calendar days, we're going to take an action, send a notification. So lots of good options there for triggers. You can also add conditions on the rule. So I only want to act on items that have this custom field with this value, or that are, in a certain status or owned by a certain owner. The last one is the actions that you're going to take. So in this case, you can create some items. You can change a field value. This is a new one that was just added here. You can update a custom field value. Another common one is notifications, right? So I'm going to @mention somebody. You can also move items into a folder, and that's the one that we will demonstrate now. So let me actually go back into this rule here. So this is the rule that's set up on our item. We're applying it to the entire space. When a new item is created, we're going to move it into the audit and assurance folder. And so if we go back and look at our item that we just added here for ABC Corp, it's in the new and active folder here. But if we come down to our by services folder and we look at the audit and assurance folder here, here is the project that we just added. And if we open up the info panel, we can see that there will be a notification from the Wrike bot indicating that the action was taken. So we scroll down here. So here's the automation bot. It included the project into the audit and assurance folder. So that's our automation rule there that was acting in the background and tagging this project into this folder here. All right. With that, happy to turn it back to you, Alex, so we can cover any additional questions.
Yeah, so we've got one around actually automations. It's one of the topics that was kind of people were getting excited about. So thanks for people that contributed their questions at the very beginning of the session in the poll. One of the hot things that people wanted to learn about was automations. And one of the things that's kind of come through, it's a bit of a lengthy one, but it's a good use case, I think. So thank you for your input here. Do you know if Wrike is considering creating a project-based automations versus account-based, where if a certain action is a trigger in the project, it would apply to a particular project? And the example they've offered here is if a RAID log file in our project, if the risk becomes triggered, the task would move from risk folder actions to issues log folder. And I think that's a great use case because I think there's a combination there of potentially using maybe a custom item type that is a RAID or a risk item type maybe, and having that as part of your blueprint or project. And so I think, Michael, without wanting to kind of go into a solution here immediately, I'd probably want to spend a bit more time on that with you. But I think, Clark, would you suggest maybe having that as an automation against a custom item type that is a RAID or risk type item, and then of course following on to that, specifically choosing a location where it's kept?
Yeah, exactly. That's a way I would approach that. And if it's not currently a custom item type, you could use a custom field as a flag. So you could flag, that RAID log with a custom field, and then create your automation rule and use the custom field as a condition that says, when I have a task that has this custom field value and this status changes, then move it here.
Gotcha. Tell you what, then, Michael, I can see your questions coming through on this, and you've got a few ideas and suggestions and pieces around it. So I'd like to be able to follow this up with you a little bit more. And so we might take it offline because I'm conscious of time here. I've got another question from somebody around, how do you map a custom field to a blueprint?
Okay. So it's similar to how you would map a custom field in a regular project. So let me go back to the blueprints section here, and let's see. Let me jump over this way. I clicked off of our blueprint, so let me go back there. So in your blueprint, you would just define the custom field value. So in table view, let me come down here. So here, we're back to our audit and assurance blueprint now. And in table view is where you manage the blueprint items, the columns that are shown in your blueprint. And once you have the column displayed, you can go in and toggle a value on for that column. So in this case, right, we have billing type here. Let's say that this specific task is non-billable. In the blueprint, I can turn that off, make it non-billable. And now when I create a project based on that, it's going to have that custom field value. If you need to see more fields, you can click the field selector here, toggle them off and on, and then set the values in the table.
Excellent. Thank you so very much there, Clark. Let's have a look here for another question that's coming through. What have I got in my question? There is. What's the difference between space and account level blueprints?
So with space level blueprints, they can see both space items and account items, but account level blueprints can only see account items. So you want to be thoughtful about that as you're creating your blueprints.
Gotcha. Good to know. Okay. It seems like I haven't got any further questions from people in the room. I might take the controls back off you, though, if it's okay. And thank you, everybody, for your contributions, for your questions. Really do appreciate it. And also, thank you to Clark for taking us through a lot of that sort of stuff. Now, I wanted to kind of wrap this up here for everybody to be aware of the fact that there are a lot of resources around you as a client of ours. We're very proud to have you as a client of ours. And of course, there is our support team that's online there to help you out, to make sure that if you've got questions around, hey, this was working for me, or I can't log in, or, for whatever reason, I can't seem to download this Excel file or upload it for whatever reason, they're there to help you out. There's also your customer success manager. If you've got one assigned or working with you, they're there to make sure that you're seeing value out of the solution. There's the Wrike Discover page. You probably know about it because it's probably how you got here in the first place. And it's got a load of learning and courses there to help you understand and get the best out of Wrike. There's also our help page and community forum, which every single bit of functionality within Wrike has got an article on it. Okay, and of course, there's community page there where you can join in the conversation, share your best practices, suggestions, ideas, and whatnot. And of course, there's your account manager, and your account manager is there as well as being a point of contact for all your billing and licensing and all that sort of stuff. They're also a resource to help you get the most out of Wrike and put you in touch with our professional services team. So if you like what you've seen today, if you like the kind of conversation and the assistance that we've got from Clark today, and you're walking away from this going, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to be able to set this up still, or you know what, I've got no time to be able to make this happen, the likes of Clark can help you get through this. They're experts in the field. They help you streamline workflows. They're there to make sure that you effectively implement the platform and see rapid results, ultimately get the best out of the platform as quickly as possible. And of course, to the folks in the room that I couldn't answer the questions for, there's a good chance that I'm going to follow up with one of our professional services team members as well. And to that effect, I wanted to say a big thank you, Clark, for your contributions and assisting and guiding us through today. Take a bow, appreciate it. And of course, everybody in the room that's joined the session today, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your inputs, and thanks for joining us. This is exactly why we do it. Thanks, everybody.